everyone. Welcome back to the Solutions Lab. I'm Chris Phillips. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Today, we're going to be talking about poly collaboration solutions on multiple platforms. And to do that, I got a very special guest. I have Joe Mukherjee. He is the Director of Technical Consultant for HP. Joe, how's it going?
You know what, Chris? It's a phenomenal day to be here. Thank you so much for hosting us and having us participate to the audience. I'm really excited to talk about some of the recent announcements that HP Poly has brought to market.
Oh yeah, we're super stoked to hear from him. It's been a great partnership ever since Poly and HP has gotten together, and we're excited to kind of see what's cooking this year in 2024. Before we do that, though, I do want to kind of go over a couple of ground things before we get started. We will be taking questions throughout this presentation. If you guys have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and highlight in the presentation where you can go ahead and ask questions. We will be taking questions throughout the entire presentation. If we can ask them as we go, we will. If not, we'll be kind of holding them all together till the end of the presentation. There are also some D&H mini sites in our resources that you might want to take a look at. They've got extra information about Poly products and as well as HP products as well. So during the presentation or after, feel free to take a look at those sites as well. But without too much further ado, Joe, I know you have a ton of content to go over, so I'm going to push it over to you and we'll get started.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. First slide. So I think this is fair to say, during the onset of the pandemic, we were very fortunate here on the Poly side of the business to have headsets and handsets and video conferencing devices. Now, this is probably a slide that resonates with the resellers in the audience. Your customer probably calling you and saying, please just give me anything that we can get our hands on. We were selling our trucker headsets to customers because they were just frankly in a panic mode. Now we've normalized, now we've stabilized, now we are, God willing, in a post-pandemic world. There's obviously some nuance with hybrid working. However, we are seeing a full-on thrust towards standardization and optimization for IT organizations. Hopefully you guys are seeing the same. Before I go too far, I wanted to make sure I touch on this specifically for my resellers in the United States. This is a grant assistance program for your customers who are in the public sector in a SLED environment. This is effectively free money for your customers. Now, what's really cool about this program, hp.com. This is effectively a way for your customers in the SLED ecosystem to get dollars from the federal government, which obviously is good for us collectively. It helps the customer fund their projects without necessarily using their own capital or operating expense. No strings attached. Grants.hp.com, up to $1 million paid out over 3 years. A call to action here, ladies and gentlemen, this grant program, this grant cycle expires on April the 29th. So there's 6 days left in this buying cycle. There will be another grant program that continues on this journey. But if you've got customers or partners for yourselves, for example, who are in the SLED environment, this is an opportunity for you, and we will do much of the heavy lifting with you guys by our side. Lens is our platform for managing the Poly HP ecosystem. And I like to think of us as having the unfair advantage of equipping our users with headsets, handsets, and video conferencing devices. That's the last bullet on this slide. Lens, ladies and gentlemen, costs you and your customers exactly $0. This is an effective way for a customer who is investing in HP Poly to have one pane of glass situated to manage their entire ecosystem, whether it be on Zoom or Teams or Google. Our platform can manage the end user's experience for their headset devices, for their handset devices, for their video conferencing devices as well. So if you don't have Lens, please get situated, poly.lens.com. If you have, if you're part of our HP reseller ecosystem, hopefully you've heard of Curiosity. For resellers, this is going to put jingle in your jeans. You have a opportunity to register your deals through our partner portal. And you'll see here on the right-hand side, these are dollars that are effectively going to be given to you as a seller. So for example, R30 USB video bar, $40 for every unit sold. So this is something that's beginning in March and will conclude in our fiscal year. So this is a way, hpcuriosity.com, to make your wives and other halves happy. In context of new video devices, this is the R30 Plus, and the setup for this, ladies and gentlemen, is really around the bring your own device workflow. Previously, on the left-hand side, you've probably been in conference rooms yourselves where you had a plethora of dongles. And as cool as that sounds, the whole world is moving towards USB-C. As a matter of fact, in the European Union, USB-C is the legislated standard for connectivity. And if you didn't know this, our good friends at Apple are also moving away from their proprietary cables to adopt USB-C. So this is the standard. We are adopting this standard, and that's where R30 Plus really shines for that bring your own device workflow. You'll notice the part number is here posted. I saw a question in the chat, will you get access to these slides? Yes, absolutely. The MSRP is $1,000. Again, that's suggested retail price. Work with distribution will get you pricing that helps you win the deal. But what I want you guys to focus on is a super easy solution for customers to deploy. It comes with a mounting bracket. The G5 docking station is where those two cables connect, and the USB-C cable is the only cable required for the end user to jack in. In addition, there's a Bluetooth remote. I get some questions, well, what's the remote for? First and foremost, there's that red mute button. I want to know when I put myself on mute that the folks on the other end are not going to hear that conversation. So mute is number one. Number two, as you would imagine, being a poly device, all the framing capabilities, which we'll speak to on the next slide, the framing modes can be changed with that remote control. And of course, volume up and down. So the remote control adds the mute, changing framings, volume up and down. The USB G5 docking station is that single USB cable to the user's notebook. By the way, that G5 docking station also supports USB PD. PD stands for power delivery. So for example, on my HP EliteBook, I'm getting 100 watts of power, and therefore it gives me a lot of confidence if I'm in a call. Hey, is my battery going to die? That's a terrible experience for everyone. So that mitigates that concern, provided that the notebook supports USB power delivery. I mentioned this before, Director AI, that's our trademark in terms of all of the framing modes. I think this is self-explanatory. So group framing, very quickly, what that does is it'll emit all of the dead space, whether that's walls or ceiling or carpet tiles. Our camera is going to use AI, artificial intelligence, to zoom in on the right number of people in that shared space. Now, in that top left box, you're seeing that we're actually showing it in a single composite. Group framing is for the folks in the room. We're going to frame them so that we give everybody that equitable experience. The one directly to the right, speaker framing, I hope that one's self-explanatory. So imagine that we're in a conference room. I'm the active speaker. Another person in the room starts to speak. We're not going to switch automatically. There is a purpose-built 3-second delay to ensure that there's not a cough or a confirmation. Yes, I agree. We want that conversation to be actually flowing from the other participant, and then the camera will move over without any human intervention to pick up the speaker frame. Presenter tracking on the bottom right, we did a lot of this during the height of the pandemic. Think about educators who are working from the classroom and all the pupils were working from their kitchen tables. Presenter tracking is going to follow that presenter. In this example, you see in front of a whiteboard. So again, no human intervention required. Person moves to and from the camera. I am a pacer, frankly speaking. When I'm doing presentations like this, I like to move about the room. And so the camera is going to track me naturally. I, frankly speaking, am most excited about people framing, which is in the bottom left. This is an AI-driven experience. So what we're doing here is we're looking for the silhouette of the human being, the head, the torso, the eyes, the nose, the mouth. We're using several points of triangulation and putting that human being torso in their own box. That really drives the whites of the eyes conversation. Really, that is the power of video conferencing, right? So 90% of communication is nonverbal. Now I'm seeing the whites of people's eyes, even though they're in a shared space. So this is all predicated on AI. People framing is our newest version. People framing accommodates up to 6 individuals in that shared space. If a 7th person were to enter, don't worry, the camera's going to back off into a group frame. And we did that purposely by design, because if we added 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, those boxes get smaller and smaller, and therefore that whole meeting equity narrative starts to struggle. All of these framing capabilities, as I mentioned before, are accessible to the user using that Bluetooth remote. This is applicable on Zoom, on Teams, on Google, on WebEx. Why? Because the R30 device is bring your own device. So whatever ecosystem, whatever platform, whatever application is running on that user's PC, that's exactly what's going to be shown to the shared display and the camera in the room. So R30 Plus is shipping now. I'm going to keep going. Let's go slide. Oh, I think it's okay. Here we go. So like I said before, you're going to get a copy of this slide. This helps you kind of give you a before and after relative to the R30 Plus. This is another camera that we've brought to market. This was announced at our Amplify Partner Conference. Now, this camera has 2 lenses, one at the base and this large camera head, okay? And this is intended to cover large rooms. So the camera at the base, what it's doing is an AI lens. So that AI lens at the base has a 170-degree field of view. The larger camera has a 71-degree field of view. It is a 4K 30 frames per second, dual 4K 8-megapixel sensor. It's at 1,700 list US dollars. And this camera is really intended for that large conference space. And you'll notice also there's a remote control to toggle between presets and the like. You'll notice your lens cloud. I talked about lens earlier. So this device is also being managed by our cloud solution. In terms of coverage, frankly speaking, we tend to be a little bit conservative. We're showing here 40 feet. I've been in our New York Experience Center and driven this camera up to 48 feet. And I was able to read the logo on my shirt at that distance. That's how good this camera is. As a matter of fact, we did a session at Microsoft just down the street here, and we had this camera shooting across the lake, and we were able to pick up the nameplate of a building 1.4 miles away. Okay, so this camera is really, really strong for those larger conference spaces. This is intended for really auditorium, classroom learning, large boardrooms. And there's a couple of framing modes here that are in play. So this is what the web UI looks like when you're designing or configuring this room. The blue box represents where the group framing will apply. The red box is representing where the presenter framing will apply. So again, given that this camera is intended for larger spaces, if there's one individual and that person is moving about the space, kind of like that remote educator I talked about earlier, as long as that person stays in that red zone, that person is going to be followed and tracked by the camera, no human intervention required. Now, let's say, for example, there's 2 people. Chris and I are sitting down inside of that frame, and we're having a conversation. I like to call that our fireside chat mode. So the camera's going to zoom in on Chris and I. We're having a fireside chat conversation. So it really is driving that equitable experience, again, without any kind of third-party matrices, switchers, DSPs. This is all done in AI using our camera technology. So to give you some experiential views, this is the full frame of view, if you will. This is the entire digital image that we're capturing. When there's one presenter tracking on, when there's 2 people, we'll go into that fireside chat mode. And when there's no people, then obviously we're capturing the entire frame. So this is applicable across our Android platform and our Windows platform. Here's a very quick video to show you the experience. So that video showed you that it was all done without anybody touching a button. The camera was aware of whether group frame rules would apply. That was that blue box, and the red box was when Gabriella, who was the presenter when she was walking about the space. The next on the docket is our Studio V52. The V52, if you're familiar with our X52, same design. We intended to make this so it's invisible to the user. Why would someone who's using these bars for a Google call or a Zoom call or a Teams call, why do they care what the platform is? Really, it should be as walk in the room, connect the cable, hit the go button, and away you go. So same concept, same industrial design, 4K, 20 megapixel camera, 95-degree field of view. This is Teams certified, Zoom certified, Google planned. This is really a bring your own device platform. However, here's kind of the cool bit, ladies and gentlemen. We can take V52 and attach the HP mini compute to it, and therefore turn a USB BYOD room into a full-fledged Microsoft Teams room on Windows or a Zoom room on Windows. So I like to talk about this as being the grow as you need to. Start BYOD, measure adoption, and as you're seeing utilization start to grow, fantastic. Add in the HP mini compute. You've taken a USB video bar, the V52, and turned it into a full-fledged Microsoft Teams room on Windows or a Zoom room on Windows. So like I mentioned, the BYOD, add the PC when you're ready to go. The alternative is our X52. Now the X52, the X30, the X70, those all have a built-in Android engine in them. The V52, however, being a video bar, requires either the user's PC in a bring your own device ecosystem, or as I mentioned, the addition of the HP mini compute, and then you're rocking a full-fledged Microsoft Teams room on Windows or Zoom room on Windows. Okay, and as I mentioned, the user will not be able to tell the difference. That's by design, so therefore we're delivering that harmonious experience to our end users. And as you'd imagine, all the framing rules I talked about earlier apply here as well. If you're not familiar, we're very proud of our noise blocking technology. So I know, Chris, your daughter is suffering from pink eye today. She was a little bit noisy. Had you been wearing one of our headsets, she wouldn't have been heard in this call.
I used to have a Poly headset that I used all the time for these particular broadcasts, and it was the primary reason I absolutely loved those Poly devices, because the noise cancellation and noise suppression on those devices across the board has always been fantastic.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Chris. Sound reflection reduction, that's really oriented for glass conference rooms. We get a lot of reverb or complaints of reverb. So what we're doing here, sound reflection reduction, is actually a very cool algorithm. I'm going to geek out here for a couple of seconds if you allow me. So what we're doing is we're measuring the hertz of the human voice. And if we hear that human voice twice, we're canceling out the second, less high fidelity version of that voice. And therefore the echo is effectively gone. And that's being done in AI. Phenomenal. Acoustic fence, that really is around building a zone, if you will. It's building a kind of a bubble around you. So people who are outside the fence are not being heard to the far end. People who are inside the fence, well, their voice will be transmitted to the far end. So here is the V52, the industrial design, as I mentioned. X52, V52 look exactly the same. All right, let's keep going. This one here is an interesting product. Now, the E360 is a device that we've announced, and we will be shipping this closer to the end of this calendar year. But we thought it was worthwhile to create some buzz, as well as to make sure we're informing our reseller community on how best to design these spaces. We've heard a lot about multicam. Now, multicam is something that we've been doing, Poly has been doing for many, many years. Hopefully you may be familiar with Eagle Eye Director 2, which had 2 camera heads. You could put multiple Eagle Eye Director 2s in a space. So we're kind of dusting off our old playbook. We're dusting off our center of table playbook as well. Hopefully you're familiar with the Polycom CX 5100, CX 5000, the Polycom Centro. So this isn't new tech for us, but we're reinventing how we're going to market. The intention of the E360 is to avoid that up the ear cam or behind the head, bald head cam. This is intended to be working in conjunction with a front. Other cameras in the market that may hoot at you when you start a call. This one will not hoot, but it does require a front of room video bar. You can think of the E360 as being an accessory to the V52 I showed you earlier. Now, one quick call out I'll make here, it's an important data point. The E360 camera is a next-gen device, and therefore it must be paired with a next-gen device as well. In other words, anything ending with a 2 in the Poly video portfolio will interrupt with the E360. The V52 is a good example. Why? It has a 2 at the end. Poly X30, X50, X70, well, they're all missing the 2 at the end. They don't have the same chipset required to energize the E360 experience. Here is what the E3 experience will look like, and again, I'll point it out, must be paired with a 2 series or second gen of our video platforms. I'll let this video play.
Meeting equity is crucial for successful hybrid meetings, but today's virtual meeting experience remains far from perfect. All too often, remote participants take a back seat in hybrid meetings due to technical limitations.
This is especially true in large conference rooms such as this, where that single front-of-the-room camera perspective quickly becomes broken when a participant turns their head away from the camera to speak to someone else.
Remote participants can no longer see or hear interactions clearly, and they're left feeling disconnected and disengaged.
When a meeting starts, the Poly front-of-room camera captures everyone in the room, centered on screen. But as soon as the discussion starts to happen, the Poly Studio E360 works in tandem with a Poly front-of-room camera to deliver the best angle of participants at the table. Adaptive technology works behind the scenes to capture the best view, whether you're looking to the center of the room or to the front of the room.
Smart switching chooses between the camera at the center of the table and the camera at the front of the room to automatically deliver the best face-forward view of participants.
So what this means is it no longer matters where you sit or where you're looking. The Poly Studio E360 will always capture the best view, giving those verbal and nonverbal cues out to the remote participants.
The Poly Studio E360 delivers meeting equity to hybrid teams, where everyone has equal share of presence and voice, no matter where they're seated or where they're joining from.
All right, so E360 is really intended for that multicam experience in conjunction with a front of room video bar, which is really crucial to explain. So I'm staring at the webcam here, but if there was a video camera in the front and I'm looking this way, they need to be looking up my ear or back of my head, right? So this is intended to be capturing the whites of people's eyes and delivering what we're calling a face-forward experience. This is a milestone for us. This is really multicam. So at launch, we'll be doing, as you see on the left-hand side of the slide, and in the future, in 2025, we're talking about deploying cameras on the edges of the space as well. So in this topology, camera above the display, camera on the top, camera on the bottom, and an E360 at the table. So no matter where a human being is facing, we're going to show them to the far end. So that kind of concludes the slides that I had prepared for today. But if it's okay, Chris, a couple of points I'd like to touch on in terms of the journey from becoming, Poly to HP and now HP Poly and where we sit in terms of the hybrid working portfolio, a couple of key considerations I'll call out. Number one, I've been here for coming up on a decade, and I'm a legacy Polycom employee. This is the first time in my tenure where we are launching a dozen video products in the upcoming 12 months. That's bigger than headsets, that's bigger than handsets. I'm strictly talking about the video portfolio. For those of you who'll be joining at InfoComm, we look forward to seeing you. You'll be able to see many of these devices in person and put them in your hands as opposed to seeing on a PowerPoint. But I guess the point I'll stress is that HP has taken a phenomenal investment portfolio, not only buying Poly for billions of dollars, but also advancing our roadmap. So those 12 devices were supposed to be launched over a 28-month period. And HP said, no, please get them into market in a 12-month period. So that's phenomenal. We've hired a gentleman named Greg Baribeau. Greg Baribeau reported to Ilya Bookstein, who is the leader at Microsoft responsible for all things Teams. Greg Baribeau reported to Ilya over a 25-year period in his career at Microsoft, and he's now on our side. We've invested with over 80 new software developers onshore, meaning in the Americas. And that, again, is very strictly on our video portfolio. So I'm hoping this is coming off the screen. I'm super excited to be part of this organization. HP brings a lot to the dance. Our partner conference, if you were there with us in Las Vegas a few weeks ago, we had Sundar Pichai, the CEO from Google. We had the CEO from AMD, the CEO from NVIDIA, the CEO from Qualcomm. We had Satya Nadella, obviously the CEO from Microsoft. That's the level up that we've experienced on the Poly side. And of course, sustainability. HP is a class leader in sustainability, which probably resonates with not only with yourselves, but also with your customer base. All of these assets are now at your disposal. We've really leveled up our game and we're in it for the long haul. So I hope that was useful, Chris. I see there's a ton of questions that came in through the chat. You guide me on what happens next, my friend.
Sure. There's a couple questions regarding Lens, so I want to backtrack to that. Rebecca asked, would the management work for team phones or strictly just the Poly devices?
Great question. So the devices, all of the Poly devices have a play in our Lens platform. In a team-specific ecosystem, what I've seen customers use Lens for is mass deployments. So what that means is if you're working with a customer and they've got hundreds and hundreds of sets, without Lens, that's an arduous task to get them all up and running in Teams Admin Center. So use Lens for that initial deployment. We are very good at managing the hardware layer. So out of box, installing certificates like 802.1x certs, that's going to be a better experience using Poly Lens. You can upload a CSV file with all the serial numbers. And so when someone is turning on their phone for the first time, that out-of-box experience, it's going to be a very simple, hey, punch in your username and password, which obviously we don't want the cloud to push, but all of the other provisioning parameters would be enabled by Lens. So Lens is additive to Teams Admin Center and super useful when we're doing the initial deployment, particularly for large headset opportunities.
Question with Lens regarding, are you able to get analytics data on the devices, like how often they're used or how long they're used for?
Great question. So there's two versions of Lens. Lens, the free version I mentioned earlier, so that will give you hardware inventory, that'll give you device and software management. There's a paywall, which we call Poly Plus. Poly Plus is really the service wrapper. So maybe I'll spend a couple of seconds on Poly Plus if I could. For the resellers in the community, this is all around post-sale service. This is, hey, I've got a broken handset or a broken headset or a broken video conferencing device. Poly Plus gives your user the ability for next business day hardware replacement. What does that mean? Well, I challenge you, go buy a TV at Costco, bring it home. Imagine you've got a dead pixel. It's going to take you a couple of weeks to figure out how to get that back to Panasonic or LG. With us, you're going to call us. We're going to do a remote diagnostic on the phone, make sure that it's actually not a software problem. once confirmed there's a hardware problem, we'll ship you a new one in a box. Okay, and that's really useful because you'll put the broken one in that box and ship it back to us. Now, where I'm going with that, Poly Plus is great for that hardware replacement strategy, but it also answers the question that was posed around analytics and utilization. So Poly Plus is service wrapper and additional components and capabilities in Poly Lens. And it's a very easy way for you guys to increase your wallet share and, of course, have a happy customer. If we talk about service wrappers after the deal is done and the customer has a poor experience, that probably is not going to be a phenomenal conversation. Start with Poly Plus, include it in your deal, have the customer walk you out of it once you've explained that, hey, you don't want next business day hardware replacement? Okay, let's take it out. You don't want additional capabilities like utilization and people counting in your platform? Okay, let's take it out. But I encourage you, start with Poly Plus, let the customer walk it out, and that's going to enable all the analytics and utilization reports that we're talking about enabled through Poly Lens.
Awesome. And Poly Plus is available through distribution, correct?
Absolutely. You bet. It's a SKU.
Awesome. Cool. So we're going to then kind of move forward a little bit because there's a couple questions regarding the R30 Plus, I believe, around the remote headset. The first, or the controller, I mean, the first one was, does the Bluetooth remote also function with the large bars, the X52 and the X70?
Yeah, so there is some interop in terms of muting and unmuting, but frankly speaking, if we're using an X series platform, you're probably going to be using a TC8 or our new TC10 platform, which is the controller in front of the room. So yes, you can mute, you can unmute, you can change the volume levels on the X series bar. Having said that, in those X rooms, you typically want to be using the controller that's intended for. So the answer is yes. However, you'll have a better experience on the TC8 and TC10.
Understood. Couple more. We got a couple more questions to go. So if you guys have any more questions, go ahead and ask them now before we go ahead and wrap up. The next question was, is this a universal remote and which would be able to work with the display as well?
It's not. It's a Bluetooth remote built for purpose on our devices.
Makes sense.
Because if it were universal, imagine we hit the power button and we're turning off everything, right? That would probably be undesired.
Yeah, and I don't trust putting a power button in any conference room.
There you go.
Because there's that it kind of comes as a panic button, and then you shut down everything, and it takes a while to start back up. So, understood there. The next question I saw is, do you offer these Poly audio video conferencing devices on a rental basis? I'm going to expand that to go, is there any kind of NFRs that people get a hold of?
Sure. So NFR, for those who don't know, is a not for resale. If you are an HP,
it took me a while to come up with NFR. I was like, this is not for what? Not for us.
Not for resale. Right. So there's a couple of different vehicles here. Not for resale is accessible through the partner portal. If you're not familiar, partner.hp.com, super easy. Sign up for a login. You'll see a button there on not for resale. Effectively, as the name would suggest, it's not intended for an end user, right? It's not intended to be a discount vehicle. It's intended for our resellers to become familiar. It's intended for the resellers' boardrooms and conference rooms, for your staff to become familiar, but it's not intended to be a discount mechanism tied to a specific opportunity. If there is a desire on a specific opportunity to find some creative mechanisms for invoicing, whether it be OPEX or CAPEX, please reach out. We've got some assets at our disposal. Another example where HP has brought a lot of wind into our sales, HP Financial Services, which is also accessible by our distribution friends at D&H, that turns a CAPEX play into an OPEX play. So NFR is really for the resellers to become familiar, as the name would suggest, not for resale. But if there's a deal-based opportunity where the customer is looking for more of an OPEX play, please reach out. HP Financial Services is the way that we would go to work with you on that opportunity.
And I will also take the moment to plug D&H's Access to Service solutions as well. We do have a cloud platform that we can set up any of these devices that you've seen today. purchase them through a D&H, you're purchasing them on a monthly recurring revenue rather than a one-time CapEx. That is available as well. Email modernsolutions@dnh.com. If you have any questions on that, they can get you all the information you need on that as well. Joe, that is all the questions. Thank you so much for your time and your knowledge today. It was a fantastic presentation. Is there anything you have for the close here for everyone?
Yeah, Infocom, if you're coming, please come and pay us a visit. You'll be able to see some of this tech. And I've only given you a slice, ladies and gentlemen. There's about another 6 or 7 products that unfortunately I didn't have the time to cover today. Large conference rooms, AI cameras, noise blocking devices. There's a plethora of devices. As I mentioned, HP has done a phenomenal job of injecting capital and human resource to really advance our agenda. Unlike some of the FUD you may be hearing from our competitors, no, boys and girls, we are here for the long haul. So thanks for the time, Chris. Thank you, D&H team. Hopefully this was great use. Again, as a reminder, if you are working with a SLED opportunity, then grants.hp.com may actually unlock some dollars that'll make your customer buyer, their decision to invest with HP Poly a lot easier. And that's of no charge and no strings attached to you guys. Thank you so much, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. If you guys have any questions or you're watching this video on demand, you can go ahead and email them, hpspecialist@dnh.com. If you're on the Canada side, it would be hpspecialistcanada@dnh.com. Our next broadcast is April 30th, Solutions Live broadcast. We'll be back with HP on the HPE side doing MSA storage devices. Please join us for that at 2 p.m. on April 30th. But with that, I will kind of let you guys go for the rest of the afternoon. Hope you guys have a great afternoon and a great rest of the week, and we'll see you guys next time. See ya.